Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for the After the First Draft webinar, your revision to publish roadmap. My name is Jennifer Blanchard. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an author, I'm a blogger, and I'm a fiction writing coach who works with serious emerging novelists on writing and revising their stories. I've actually written 3 writing guides, and I'm currently working on a novel, which I'm in the process of final revisions on and will be publishing this summer. What I'm going to tell you about today is the 16 steps that you need to take if you want to go from first draft to published novel. I'm going to tell you how to go about making sure that your novel is as good as it can possibly be before you publish it. I'm going to tell you what you need to think about during each step of the process. And then I'm going to tell you how you can work with me to finish your revision in 90 days. So let's dive in. The very, very first step, and I have to put this in here because it's just so important, is to celebrate. So often we accomplish things and we don't take the time to actually acknowledge it and to celebrate the fact that we did it. Writing a first draft is huge. It is huge. Some people have wanted to write their first draft for, years. And so when you finally do it, you have to celebrate that shit. It's huge. It's so huge of an accomplishment and so amazing. You have to make sure that you celebrate. Make sure you tell everybody you did it and do something big to celebrate. Something you wouldn't do on a regular basis. Make it really special because you deserve it. It's a lot of work to write a novel. It's not an easy thing to do, and so you need to remember that. Celebrate it. There's absolutely no limit on how long you take to celebrate. So celebrate the hell out of this accomplishment and just really do something that makes you feel good because, you've come a long way. So once you're done celebrating, the thing you want to do next is let your draft sit. So I think Stephen King talks about this in the book on writing, that he recommends letting your draft sit for a minimum of 6 weeks. Now, I find 6 weeks to be the perfect amount of time because it's long enough for you to get some distance, but short enough to keep you interested in the story. This is just a recommendation. Of course, you can choose the time frame that works best for you. You may not want to wait that long. You may want to just jump right back in right away, or you may want to wait longer if you have another project maybe that's coming up. It's all up to you. So I say 6 weeks minimum, but you can always, go longer, or you can always go shorter based on the timeline that you have for your particular book. So once you're done letting it sit and you're ready to actually dive into the revising stage, what you want to do is first read your draft. So this read through, I highly recommend you just read. You don't bring a red pen or notebook or anything like that. You're not reading for judgment or criticism. You're just reading to see what you have to work with. So, read it all the way through from start to finish. Don't make any notes yet. Now, I'm a control freak, so even though I didn't bring a red pen to my first draft read, I definitely was making notes in my head. So, if you're like that, it's totally fine. You're going to do it anyway, so you might as well. Which obviously, even having mental notes is going to help you once you get to the next step. This can take between 4 and 6 hours depending on how long your draft is. When I started reading mine, I ended up staying up till 3 in the morning because I was so excited about the story that I wrote that I couldn't stop reading it. And even though it wasn't exactly how I wanted it, it just felt really good to read something and feel like I did it. I wrote this book. Whether or not it's how I want it, it's still written. So now you want to read it again. Your next step is to read it again. But this time you want to come with your pen and your notebook ready to go. So, read through it with critical eyes, and not critical as in this sucks kind of a thing, but critical as in how can I improve this? How can I make it better? What I like to do is write notes directly on my printed copy, which is why I print the story out. The reason I do this also is because for me, having, a stack of 250 to 300 pages makes me feel like I actually wrote a book. If I'm looking at it on my computer, it doesn't have that same feel. And for me, it's all about feeling the story, and knowing that it's done and that I did it. So I like to print it. Plus, like I said, I like to make notes on the printed copy. I actually, in my notebook, will section it off. I will split it into 4 parts. So part 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the 4 parts of the story. And then I actually make notes for each section so that I'm not having to, flip through a notebook 100 times and try to find all the notes I have for each part. I just have them sectioned off so that I can just go right there and know when I'm working on part 1, here's all the notes for that part. Another thing I like to do is actually set up sections for characters. I may even have pages for the main characters, like the protagonist, the antagonist, and any secondary characters who are important to the story. And the reason I do this is so that, again, I'm not running around trying to find all of my notes. I've got them all organized and ready to go. And they're all sectioned off so that I can just flip to the page and say, okay, this character needs the following changes. And you can do the same thing with setting or with, anything else you have that you want to fix in the story. Now, this can take anywhere from 10 hours to 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how much of a mess your draft is or not. So, again, I read mine and made notes in about 10 hours or so. It was, for me, a little bit easier, I think, because I did a lot of planning ahead of time, which I'll talk about in another step. So now you want to create a scene-by-scene post-draft beat sheet. And Larry Brooks talks a lot about the beat sheet, but basically what it is a bulleted list of every scene in your story. So not the scenes that you want to have, but the scenes you currently have. So make a list of everything in your draft currently. This will help you to have a more concrete overview and a big picture of what you have to work with. Now, I spent 8 months planning my story that I'm working on right now. 8 months seems a little crazy probably, and it normally doesn't take that long to plan a story, except that I had a lot of other projects going on at the same time, so I wasn't just focusing on this. But also, I like to be super detailed. I refuse to write a single word unless I know exactly where I'm going. I know every plot point. I know the characters. Because for me, having this much detail helps me have a better first draft and gives me less frustration, which, the first book I ever wrote in 2008, I rewrote 3 times and never felt like the story was at a place where I felt good about it. And so for me, the planning phase is super important. And if I have to rewrite a whole draft from scratch a second time, I won't be finishing, which is why I plan. So doing your post-draft beat sheet can take anywhere from, 15 to 20 hours, depends on, the length of your story. And also it depends on if you worked from, a plan beforehand. But it's really important to get an overview of what you have to work from. So then you want to review your post-draft beat sheet. So go through the beat sheet and see what has to happen. Do you need to delete things, remove them? Do you need to add something? Is there a scene missing that needs to be there? You're going to likely find a lot of things that need to be changed or recreated from scratch. But that really depends on how much you know about your story already. So like I said, for me, I planned all of my story out. I knew every detail about every scene, about every character, about all the structure. So for me, when I did this process, I found that I could take what I already had, and a lot of it was still usable. So I didn't have to start from scratch on most of it. Now, this can take up to 20 hours, I say. It again depends on how much pre-planning you did. So for me, the beat sheet changes took about 10 hours because I had a lot of planning done. So now once you have all your changes figured out and you know where you want to go with the story, I recommend, and this is you don't have to do this step, but I just throw it in there because I just think it's really important to have organization. So now you want to make a new beat sheet that basically has all of the changes incorporated into it. This is so that you're not looking at a beat sheet that's got arrows and red marks and notes and trying to figure all this out, because it could be a total mess and you might miss something. So it's really important to just see what you have and then write it on a clean sheet, so that way you're not questioning, was this what I really meant, or is this the right thing? I know it seems like a pain in the ass sometimes to repeat something, right? But trust me, you're going to feel a lot better if you don't have to look at notes that have, arrows and stuff all over them. Now for me, I like to have a detailed roadmap of my story. Not just what is this scene, but actually writing out the specifics about the scene. So what's the mission? And the mission meaning the purpose. Why is the scene in the story? The location. So where is it taking place? The time or the time of day. So, is it night? Is it morning? Is it lunchtime? Whatever I need to know. And then the other thing is that I like to have a notes section for my beat sheet or my roadmap. And that helps me to just keep track of what else has to go in the scene. So for example, I might have a scene where I came up with some dialogue. And so I'll write it in the notes. That way, when I get to that scene to revise it, I know to go to the notes section and use that dialogue because I already wrote it specifically for that scene. I might actually write in there any information that needs to go into the scene. So if there was something that wasn't in there yet but needs to be, that's where I would write it, in the notes section. Now, this time estimate is about 2 to 3 hours. It depends on how much revising you had to do on your beat sheet. Basically, you're just recopying what you had onto a new document or a new sheet of paper so that you can look at it clearly. Now, it's also an opportunity to have your scenes in the correct order and make all your final changes, so that way you're not drawing arrows and trying to follow, all these weird notes. Another option is to use index cards. I like to use index cards when I get to this point because I like to lay them all out in front of me and be able to shift them around if I feel like a scene needs to be moved or if there's something else that has to be, changed. I like to be able to do it that way. So now you want to actually jump in and revise your draft using the new beat sheet. So you're actually going to jump in and get started rewriting. So some things you might actually be doing from scratch, like scenes that you didn't have before but you need, or some scenes that just didn't work and you're starting over again. And you may also be just revising a scene. So you might be able to copy and paste what you already had into the new draft and then, make some revisions. So because I did so much planning ahead of time, I was able to save about 60% of my first draft, which was awesome. So I did a lot of revising as far as, copying what I had, pasting it into the new draft, and then making changes so that it all flowed together. So making sure that the story matched, that pieces were the same, and that it all was cohesive. Now, sometimes the rewriting phase can actually go faster than the writing phase. It just all depends on how much planning you did, how much figuring out of your story you did ahead of time. I estimate on time up to 6 months for rewriting your story. It depends on the length of the story. It depends on how much planning you've already done. When I did my story plan, like I said, it took me about 8 months, but I wrote the first draft in 2. And then I was able to get the revision going. I started the revision probably in end of January-ish. And it's been about 3 months almost. And I'm a few scenes away from being finished. So it's all about, whatever kind of timeline you're working on. So in total, this could be a process of, 6 months, 8 months. It could be a year. It could even be longer. It's all just depends on, where you're starting from, what you have so far, and what you're planning on doing with it. So if you're looking for, a faster paced, I want to get this book out here this year kind of a thing. Before I go into step 9 through 16, I just thought I would mention I have a program called the Novel Studio, and we will finish your rewrite in 90 days, and you'll be ready to send it to an editor. This is going to get you so much closer to having your book published, which I know you've been dreaming of because I've been dreaming of it too. In this program, we rework your structure if it needs reworking. We will strengthen your characters. We will amp up your plot. And I'll be by your side the entire time, giving you feedback and guidance, suggestions to make sure that you have the best book you could possibly have before you send it to your editor. Now, this program is for serious emerging novelists only. It's for people who are committed to taking action and not making excuses. So I take my work very seriously, and I expect my clients to do the same thing. Now, if you're interested in learning more about this program or to see if it'd be a good fit for you, you can actually sign up for a free clarity call. Just go to jenniferblanchard.net/clarity call, and we'll see if this would be a good fit for you. Now, there's no obligation or anything like that. It's just a conversation to see if, we would be a good fit to work together. We'll talk about where you're at with your story, where you want to go with it, and, we'll see how we gel. And if we do and, you want to take the next step, that's great. We can talk about working together. And if we see that we're not a good fit, then, we'll just go our separate ways. So if you're interested, again, jenniferblanchard.net/clarity call. It's just a conversation. There's no obligation to sign up for anything. It's just, talk and see if this would work for you. So moving on. So once your draft is rewritten, it's good to go. You're feeling real good about it. Now you want to get some beta readers in the mix. Beta readers are basically people who will read the story for you and give you feedback. They're the early readers before your actual readers come in and read it. I always recommend you choose beta readers who read your genre of novel. So you don't want to be a fantasy author and pick, a chick lit person to read your story because most likely they're not going to like it very much. Not because it's not a good story, but because it's not really the genre they read. So for me, I write chick lit, which they don't really call it that anymore, but that's what I consider myself, a chick lit writer. So I like to find readers who read that genre because I know those are the people I'm targeting with this story. You always want to get your beta readers to be people that you're targeting, that you would actually want to be your regular readers, people you would want to have buying your book. If you're lucky enough, you can find a beta reader who's also an editor. That's the case for me. I have a good friend who's an editor, and she beta reads all my stories and edits them for me. So she can give me feedback, on things that normal beta readers probably couldn't. But what you want to get your beta readers to give you is feedback on the story, the conflict, the characters, if you need more description, if the pace is too slow or too fast. You can find beta readers by, obviously asking your friends or anyone you know who reads your genre. Or, a good place is on Facebook. There is actually a ton of writing groups. And you can go in there and you could ask if anyone would be interested in beta reading your book. I actually run a Facebook group. A lot of you listening to this webinar right now are in the group. But if you're not yet, you can find it on Facebook. It's called the Emerging Author Incubator. And we would love to have you in there, and we would love to, have you post your story. Everyone's always posting their writing and getting feedback, and it's a great place to find some readers and some camaraderie. So I like to put a time frame on beta reads. I recommend 6 weeks, so giving them about a month and a half to read the story and to give you some feedback. Now, it depends on your timeline. So some people's timelines are a little bit longer, and so they can give the beta reader more time. I like to say 6 weeks, and I, again, set the time frame so that I can stick to my launch schedule, because I know I want to get this book out there in July. So if that's the date that I'm working backwards from, then I know that my beta readers have to get their feedback to me by, end of May, early June latest. So now, while you're basically letting these people read the book for you, reread the draft you currently have. See, where it's at. You should have a pretty decent draft to work from, but if you don't, this is the part where you want to make sure that everything works, flows, etc. And your beta readers are, of course, going to have more suggestions for you. So this can take 4 to 6 hours, again, depending on the length of your draft. It's all about you reading it and deciding, how you want to go with the story. Now, this is when your next step is to give it a final polish. So once you get your feedback from your beta readers and you've got your notes from your final read-through, you want to do another polish. You want to make sure that you've implemented any changes you want to make. You want to make sure that you have the story exactly where you want it. You should be feeling really good at this point. If you're not, then there's probably more reworking that needs to be done. So work on it until you feel confident that you have a good story. Now, the other thing is, if you're a perfectionist, which is a problem for me as well, you have to put a time frame on it. You have to say, at some point, this is good enough, and I'm sending it to an editor to get, professional feedback. And you can always make changes after that. So now your next step is hiring an editor. So you've got your draft, it's ready to go, you feel real good about it, you know the story is strong. Now you bring in your professional. A professional is going to see things that you probably won't notice, and if you haven't worked out all of your structural issues or plot holes, the editor will find them and fix them. Hopefully by now you've done that, and I would obviously highly recommend you do that during your revising period. But if you miss something for some reason, the professional editor will find it for you. Now, most editors charge per word or per page. Some charge per hour, but I think that's kind of rare. I would recommend looking for somebody who does per word or per page, because then you're going to get a flat fee as opposed to an hourly rate. Because with a flat fee, even if it takes someone 15 hours to read and edit your book, you're still paying the same rate. If you're paying by hour and it takes them 15 hours, you're going to be paying a lot more. So highly recommend, word by word or by page. You should always interview the editors you're interested in working with. Try to find 2 to 3 of them if you can. And you want to, get on the phone with them and ask them questions, ask them about their style, their turnaround time, have their clients been happy in the past? And you want to choose an editor who fits your writing style. So if you can, and this isn't always an option, but sometimes it is. So if you can find an editor who works specifically with your genre, like let's say there's an editor who does just historical fiction or who does, fantasy novels and romance novels. Those would be good editors to go with if that's the genre you're writing in, because those editors will know very specific things about your genre and how stories have to unfold. Because in some genres, like for example, romance, readers expect a certain story. They expect a story to unfold in a certain way, the happy ending type thing. So an editor who deals specifically with this genre will know things like that. Now, another thing is you can usually get an editor to give you a sample edit. I think usually it's 7 to 10 pages, depends on the editor. But what you can do is send them part of your story and they can send back their suggested edits, and you can look at them and see if this message meshes with your style. It may not, and in that case, you would want to find a different editor. Now, the other thing you want to be thinking about is that when you choose your editor, you want to make sure you sign a contract with them. And the contract should have a specific timeline for turning around the first round of edits. Usually 90 days is the quickest turnaround time. Some editors take 6 months. It really just depends. I think anyone longer than 6 months probably isn't worth your time because you're going to be waiting quite a while. 90 days for editing is usually pretty average. Now, in your contract, it should also state whether or not multiple edits are included, and if they are, it needs to say that, and if they're not, what the additional charge is. Now, most editors will give you a couple of rounds of edits, but it just depends, because books are longer works, and so sometimes they just do one. It just depends on the editor. So again, these are questions you can be asking during the interview phase. Now, if you don't already know an editor, you can find one on, a site like odesk.com or Elance, or you can just search book editors on Google. And again, editing can take anywhere from 30 days to 6 months, depending on the person you're working with. So while you're waiting for your editor to send back your edits, you don't want to just be sitting around, especially if you plan on publishing this book once you get it back from the editor and make your changes. So now is the perfect time for you to start building your author platform. And what that means is basically building your home on the web. So that usually would mean a website at the bare minimum. Typically, you would want a blog as well. I mean, you're an author and you want to show people that you write. A social media presence. So you don't have to be on every social media site. I recommend picking one and doing a really good job on it before you jump into more than one. But if you are already on a few of the different sites, it's totally fine to just keep using those. If you're not, I recommend a Facebook page. Now, not just a Facebook account, but a Facebook fan page where people can like your page, not just add you as a friend. You don't want them to add you as a friend. You want them to like your page. It's different. And that really is when people go on Facebook and looking for someone as an author, they're looking for a fan page, not the person's actual Facebook account. Now, the other thing you want to have is an email list. And I know at first it seems crazy, like, why would I set up an email list? I don't have anybody on there, or, I don't have any readers yet, whatever. But the reason I recommend doing it from the beginning is so that when you do have those readers, they're available right away to jump on your email list if they want to hear from you. So that way, you're starting from square one and you're already going to have this email list. See, I started my, online writing career in 2008, and I didn't have an email list until probably mid 2009, maybe. And so I spent a year and a half writing and promoting and not ever getting anybody's email. So the problem is I had no way to let them know when I had a new article out, when my books are being published, anything like that. When you have an email list, you have a direct communication to the people who want to hear from you. Remember that. Now, as a professional author, I highly recommend you have all four of these things: a website, a blog, a social media presence, and an email list. You don't have to go crazy and spend a lot of money or get fancy. Just something simple. There's a lot of free websites out there, like Wix.com is one, WordPress.com. You can get free website/blog. Obviously, social media is free, and if you want to do an email list for free, there's MailChimp, which I don't use, but I know they have a free version. So that's always a good way to get started, and you can always upgrade to a different paid platform later if you wanted to. So again, always up to you. But the other thing to think about is that you really think about where you want to go with this writing dream. So, are you just publishing just to publish and get the book out there and so that you can say you did it? Or are you publishing to actually get readers, have a career, whatever. So you want to think about, what is your dream? Like for me, I know that I want to publish a lot of books, and I plan on having some of those books turned into movies. And so I know that I have to be out there professionally. I have to have a website. I have to look professional. Now, if you don't want any of those things, then you don't have to do all of this. It's really deciding what you want and then going from there. So let's say you just want to publish and get readers. Okay, so then you definitely want to make sure you have all these things. The other thing is, even though it's not happening right now, act like it is. Do all the things you would do if your book was out there and you're getting ready, you're published, or you're getting ready to publish. Act as if you have what you want, because that's going to be the best way to take it seriously, to be professional, and to, help yourself grow in a big way. So the initial setup of your platform probably will take between 5 and 10 hours, and then 3 to 5 hours each week to upkeep. Now, you don't have to do this all on your own. I tend to be pretty tech savvy, so I like to do most things on my own, but I have definitely hired people in the past to, design my website, help me with social media stuff and all of that. So if you're not interested in learning how to do any of this stuff, you can definitely go to those same sites I mentioned before, like Elance or Odesk, and find people who will do it for you. That's always an option. You never have to do it yourself if you don't want to. So now once the changes come back from your editor, you want to jump in and start making them. The thing to remember is that your editor's comments are just suggestions. You don't have to make any of them if you don't want to. Now, it's your book and you get to decide. But keep in mind that you hired this person because they're professional and they know what they're doing. So they're not giving you these changes to hurt you. They're giving them because they want to help you make your book awesome. And so just remember that. They're on your side. They're not trying to tell you your book sucks. They're not trying to tell you that your writing sucks. None of that stuff. They're just trying to help you. So, take a look at the changes. At first, you might be a little upset maybe, or maybe you're not. It depends on how much changes they suggest. Just whatever you do, don't take it personally. They're not trying to hurt you. They're just trying to help. So, look at the changes, let them sit with you for a couple of days, think about it, and then you can actually sit down and start making the changes and decide which ones you're going to make and which ones you're not. It's all up to you. This can take you anywhere between 30 days and 3 months, depending on if you have a lot of changes to make or if you're just getting, a few line edits. So now this step, you only need to do if you're self-publishing. If you're not self-publishing, then your eventual publisher will take care of it for you. But if you're self-publishing, then you're going to have to take care of this yourself. Well, unless you decide to hire a company to do it for you. But basically, you're going to want a designer. Somebody to design a book cover for you and the back cover. Someone to, do the layout and all of that. Great design is super important to selling books, especially the cover. You need something that stands out to your target reader and that makes them want to grab your book and open it and start reading. If you don't have that, your book will just sit there, and you don't want that. So you want to make sure that you are getting the design that looks as professional as a book that you find on the shelf at Barnes & Noble. Now, with a designer, same thing. You want to make sure you interview this person if you can, and ask them questions about their work. Take a look at their portfolio. Without a doubt, you have got to look at their portfolio and see what they've done already. Do you like their work? Is there a style gel with your style? Are you looking for, something more specific that they don't offer? These are things you want to be thinking about and asking about when you talk to your designer. So like for me, I actually have a good friend of mine who, he's not a designer full time. He actually just does it on the side, but he designs all my book covers for me. And the reason is because I love his work. And for me as an artist and author, I love the idea of helping promote other artists. And so by having him design my cover, I'm able to use my platform and my marketing and promotion to also promote him, because if someone sees the cover design and they love it, I can say, hey, go to my friend. So I like to be able to share the work of people that I love. And so I like to have him do my book covers. I just saw my book cover he did for my novel, which I'm super excited about, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. So yeah, coming soon. But again, you want to make sure you like the person's work. So definitely check out their portfolio. Now, a lot of designers will just send you a questionnaire and say, fill this out, tell me the colors you like and the style and the fonts and all that stuff. Some designers may actually read the book for you and come up with their own idea. It's up to the designer to tell you how they like to work. If they prefer to just have you fill out the questionnaire, just make sure you're really detailed and make sure that you tell them if you like certain things or don't like certain things. If you saw something in their portfolio that you really liked, you want to make sure that you tell them that so that they know the style you're looking for. Because again, a person can't be in your head and extract what you're thinking. So you have to tell them, and you have to be as descriptive as possible so that they get it and they can do what you're looking for. So if you don't already know a designer, you can find designers on odesk.com or Elance, or you could just Google book cover designers. If you're on Instagram, there's actually a lot of cover designers on Instagram, and they showcase their work on there, so you can check it out. That's another option as well. So hiring a designer can be anywhere from 30 days to 3 months. It depends on how much design work is needed for your book and who you're working with. So some people, like let's say a designer that does design full time, is likely going to have a client list that's scheduled out over the next few months. So it might take a little bit longer, as opposed to like my friend who is not a full-time designer, and so he can usually turn a book around for me in 30 days. Again, depends on the person you're working with. So now comes the very final step. Well, not the final step, but the final step in the publishing process. And that step is publishing. So hopefully by this point, you've already decided which direction you want to go. Are you going to, traditionally publish, or are you going to self-publish? If you're traditionally publishing, this is the point where you want to be thinking about pitching an agent or finding small presses who take unsolicited manuscripts and then, sending to them. If you're self-publishing, which is the route that I'm going with my story, then you want to make sure that, you're ready to go. You have to figure out which platform you're going to use. Are you going to go through CreateSpace? Are you going to use a company that does all the stuff for you and all you have to do is send them your book and your cover? It's all up to you. So I choose self-publishing because for me, I think it's important to have control of my author platform, to have control of my creative work, and I want to be able to choose my cover. I want to be able to, have final say on everything. When you traditionally publish, you don't get control of any of that. And for me, that just doesn't work. So I'm a self-publisher, but very professional. The thing is, if you're self-publishing, you need to take it as seriously as you would traditional, if not even more seriously. So, get a good designer, get a good editor, work with a coach if you're not sure about, the rewrite going well. If you're not sure that it's working or that you're not sure of the story, get some help, because the more professional you treat this, the better product you're going to end up with and the happier you're going to make your readers. Now remember, the publishing process is all up to you. So it's your choice to decide what's going to make you the happiest. I recommend that you go with what makes you happy, not what you think you should do. So a lot of times we think we should traditionally publish because we always thought we wanted our book in, Barnes & Noble or whatever. I mean, if that's your dream, if you want to see your book on the shelf in Barnes & Noble, you have to traditionally publish. There's no other option, because self-publishing won't get your book there unless you're publishing and you've sold enough of it where a bigger publisher has taken notice. For me, I know most people aren't shopping in Barnes & Noble anyway. They're buying books online. So I don't really care about traditional publishing. I don't care about being in Barnes & Noble. I just want to know that I'm putting out a book that I feel good about, that I know represents me. And so self-publishing is the way to go. But again, you have to know what makes you happy. Only you can answer this question. It's up to you. But just please choose what your heart desires. Don't choose what you think you should. Just choose what you really want, because that's the only way you're ever going to be happy. And I didn't write this as a separate step, but I'm going to just reiterate it again because it's so important. No matter what you do, no matter which path you choose, please, please, please do not forget to celebrate. You are awesome. You did this. You're amazing, and you wrote a book. Not only did you write it, but you went through the whole process, and now you're publishing it. Fucking awesome. So amazing. And you need to remember that and celebrate it, because you came a long way and you worked really hard to get here. There are some people who never ever get here, who work their whole lives on a story and never finish. You aren't that person. You finished. You got here. You published. And you're publishing. So celebrate that and remember it, because it's a huge accomplishment and it's really important. So now publishing can take anywhere from 30 days to several years. It depends on the route you're taking. So for example, I had a good friend who she refused to go any other direction except traditionally published. It took her 11 years. She finally got herself published through a traditional publisher. It took 11 years. That was her choice. I just want to get my books out there and start getting readers and write more books and get more readers. So for me, self-publishing is the way to go. So I could get a book out there probably within 30 days of me being finished and ready to go. Again, it's all about what you want. So that's the end of this presentation. I thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned a lot. And if you have any questions, please hit me up in the Facebook group. Again, it's called the Emerging Author Incubator. And if you are interested in having help with your revision and with getting your story done in a quicker period of time, I would love to talk to you and tell you more about the Novel Studio and see if you would be a good fit to work with me. And again, you can sign up for a free call by going to jenniferblanchard.net/claritycall. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you soon.